Alright, let's get this out of the way. Working at FAANG is impressive. It's competitive, it takes effort, and yeah, the free lunches are probably better than yours. But let's stop pretending that everyone who lands a job at Google is some untouchable code wizard blessed by the programming gods. Because here's the truth, most FAANG devs aren't that special. They're just regular people who figured out how to beat the interview system. That's it. They studied LeetCode until their brain went numb, memorized 87 tree traversal patterns, and said just enough in their system design interview to sound like they knew what they were doing. They're not smarter than you. They're not better than you. They just passed a very specific test. And that test looks nothing like real-life software engineering. I've talked to people who work at these companies, and you know what most of them are doing? Meetings, ticket grooming, refactoring the same internal tool for the third quarter in a row. Some haven't written new code in months. But hey, at least their LinkedIn says building scalable infrastructure for global impact. Look, this isn't to hate on people working at big tech. If you're there, congrats. You earned it. But this weird worship we have for FAANG devs, it's gotta stop. Because while you're out here grinding, building full stack projects solo, fixing bugs in your sleep, and learning on your own, some dev at Meta is spending their day reviewing PRs that change font sizes. And no one's talking about the devs at small startups solving actual user problems, shipping features in days, or building products from scratch. They might not have $1 billion logo behind them, but they're doing real engineering. We act like FAANG is the peak of success, but it's just a job. And just like any job, it comes with trade-offs. So no, you're not behind. And no, your career isn't less valuable because you didn't make it past Google's 4th behavioral round. The real flex? Solving problems, building stuff, getting better every day. FAANG devs do it. Non-FAANG devs do it, you can do it. So you just got hired as a full stack developer? Congratulations. You're now the chief debugger, lead designer, back-end whisperer, front-end firefighter, part-time DevOps engineer, and emotional support unit for your own burnout. Let's be real, being full stack used to mean something. It meant you had range. You could build from top to bottom and hold your own across the stack. But now, full stack is just a trendy way to say we're under-resourced, and you're the resource. I've been there. 1 hour, I'm styling a button that somehow breaks only on Safari 14.3. The next, I'm in terminal debugging a failing CI build I didn't touch. Then product wants to know why the staging server is down, because apparently I also manage infrastructure now? That's not versatility. That's context switching chaos. And the more hats you wear, the less focused you become. And when your brain is bouncing between front-end and back-end, DevOps and Jira, you stop building thoughtful systems. You start shipping duct tape, quick fixes, last-minute patches, legacy code written at 3 a.m. that still powers half the app because no one ever had time to come back and clean it up. That's how burnout creeps in. Not because you don't like coding, but because coding turns into this never-ending game of put out the next fire before the sprint demo. And here's the scam. Companies love full-stack developers because they get one person doing the work of 3. And you get a job title that looks great on LinkedIn, while your soul quietly exits your body during your 5th emergency deploy of the week. Even the industry is waking up to the lie. More and more teams are splitting front-end and back-end again. Not because they're old school, but because they finally realized maybe, just maybe, no human being should be expected to juggle it all without dropping something. Now don't get me wrong, full stack has its place. If you're building a side project, working at a 2-person startup, or just trying to learn everything fast, go for it. It's empowering. You move fast, learn faster, and you ship the whole product solo. But at scale, it's a trap. It looks like freedom. It feels like opportunity, but underneath it's just overload dressed up as versatility. Being full stack shouldn't mean being stretched thin. It shouldn't mean being the fall guy for bugs no one else understands. It shouldn't mean you're the only one who knows how to restart the app, redeploy the server, and fix the navbar alignment. It should be a skill, a tool in your toolbox, not a job description companies use to cut their hiring budget in half. So if you're feeling like your role expects 5 jobs from 1 paycheck, you're not crazy. You're just stuck in the full stack career trap. Why does every dev tutorial feel like a trap? You start with excitement. You find a course, a video, or a blog post promising to teach you React, Python, Tailwind, Docker, whatever. The thumbnail looks clean. The intro is confident. The dev in the video says, by the end of this, you'll build a fully functional app. And you're in. You start coding along. Things are going well. You type exactly what they type, you get the same output, and it feels like you're making progress. But somewhere around hour 2, things start to feel off. You're not learning how to solve problems, you're learning how to follow instructions. They build a to-do app because of course it's a to-do app, and you feel like you've built something. But then you try to make your own project, and suddenly nothing makes sense. You don't remember the syntax, you don't know what goes where. You've been typing, but you haven't been thinking. And that's when it hits you. The tutorial didn't teach you to code, it taught you to copy. Welcome to the dev tutorial trap. This isn't about bad instructors or low-quality content. Most tutorials are made with good intentions, but the format itself can be misleading. When you're following along step by step, you don't have to make decisions. You don't hit real bugs, you don't get stuck and have to unstick yourself, and that's where real learning happens. You're tricking your brain into thinking you understand because the illusion of progress feels good. But real dev work, it's messy, it's confusing. It's 90% debugging and 10% hoping you didn't just break everything. Tutorials skip that part. They cut out the chaos. The result? You get this false sense of confidence. You think you're ready. Until you try to build anything that isn't in the video. And here's where it gets worse. When it doesn't work, you blame yourself. You think, I'm not smart enough. Everyone else gets this. Maybe I'm not meant for this. But the truth is, it's not your fault. You just got stuck in the loop, the tutorial loop. You finish one video and jump to the next, and the next, and the next. All in the name of learning, but what you're really doing is avoiding the scary part, building something without hand-holding. So how do you escape it? You stop watching tutorials like they're episodes of Netflix. You pick a small project, something dumb, something simple. You try to build it, you struggle, you fail, you hit a wall. And then, and only then, you go back to the tutorial. But this time, you're not following blindly. You're looking for something specific. You're solving a problem that you actually hit. That's when tutorials become powerful. When they answer your question, not distract you from the discomfort of learning. Here's a rule. If you finish a tutorial and can't build a similar project without help, you didn't learn. You just watched. Learning to code isn't passive. It's active. It's painful. But it's also incredibly rewarding. So yeah, tutorials are useful. But they're not the answer. They're a tool. Use them when you're stuck, not to avoid getting stuck. If you've ever finished a 5-hour tutorial and still felt like you didn't know anything, you're not alone. That's the trap. The only way out is through the struggle, through the bugs, through the part where you want to slam your keyboard and become a barista. That's where the growth happens. So stop trying to consume your way to confidence. Building break. Learn. Tech interviews aren't designed to find good engineers. They're designed to find people who memorize elite code problems like it's a competitive sport. You're not being tested on how well you solve real-world problems. You're being tested on whether you remember how to invert a binary tree while someone watches you over Zoom and breathes heavily into their mic. Forget communication skills, collaboration, or debugging under pressure. Nope. They want to see if you can implement Dijkstra's algorithm from scratch in a Google Doc with no autocomplete. And if you ask a clarifying question, they say, that's part of the challenge. What challenge? Mind reading? You prepare for weeks, mock interviews, flashcards, the works. Then the interviewer shows up 15 minutes late, says, this is just a chill conversation, and hits you with a system design question that makes you doubt reality. Design Twitter, but make it scalable. Cool. Should I build Instagram while I'm at it? And even if you somehow survive the whiteboard circus, guess what? They still might ghost you. Because you were great, but we went with someone who's a slightly better cultural fit. Translation: you didn't guess the sorting trick fast enough. The truth is, most tech interviews are optimized for gatekeeping, not hiring. Companies are so obsessed with filtering out the wrong devs, they forget how to find the right ones. We don't build real software by solving graph theory problems under a timer. We build it by Googling, debugging, collaborating, and occasionally crying in the bathroom stall during prod incidents. If you've ever bombed an interview and thought, maybe I'm not cut out for this, you're wrong. You just didn't train for the Hunger Games of software hiring. Why does every developer job eventually turn into maintenance work? You join a new company, excited to build cool features. You think you'll be designing systems, solving hard problems, maybe even pushing some boundaries. Your GitHub is fresh, your VS Code theme is on point, and you're ready to write the cleanest, most scalable code the world has ever seen. But fast forward 6 months, maybe less, and suddenly you're knee-deep in Jira tickets, debugging code you didn't write and adding a new checkbox to a form that already has 12 of them. Welcome to the maintenance phase, a place every developer ends up, and often stays in longer than they expected. Here's the reality no one really prepares you for. Most software jobs aren't about building cool stuff from scratch. They're about keeping existing things alive without them exploding. The code is already written, the system is already shipped. Now your job is to stop it from collapsing under its own weight. Why does this happen? Because shipping is just the beginning. The moment your code goes to production, everything changes. The priorities shift. It's no longer about getting something working. It's about keeping it working. Which means fixing bugs you didn't cause, supporting features you didn't build, updating dependencies without breaking the app, rewriting logic that no one understands anymore. Suddenly, you're less of a creator and more of a caretaker. You're not writing fresh code, you're babysitting code, reading ancient logic like it's a lost manuscript, trying to figure out why a feature breaks only in production and only on Tuesdays. And the kicker? The original developer who wrote that logic? They're gone, moved on to another team, another company, another galaxy. The only clue they left behind? A to-do comment and a passive-aggressive git commit from 3 years ago. This isn't a fluke. It's the cycle. Most systems live way longer than their creators expect. What was once a fast MVP becomes the company's core product. What started as just a prototype is now responsible for processing customer payments, generating reports, or managing sensitive data. That means you can't just rewrite it every time something's messy. You have to work with it, around it, through it, carefully. And yeah, it's not glamorous. Nobody's writing Medium posts about how they cleaned up someone else's 3-level nested if-else chain. But this is where real engineering happens. Writing brand new code is fun, but maintaining it? That's the part where you learn. Architecture, because you finally see the consequences of design decisions. Testing, because you're tired of breaking things with every deploy. Empathy, because someone else is going to read your code next. Every dev job turns into maintenance work, because software is never done. It evolves, grows, breaks, gets patched, gets reworked, and the bigger it gets, the more time is spent keeping it alive, not reinventing it. In fact, some of the best engineers out there are the ones who don't get bored with maintenance. They see the value in stability, in making systems better over time, in being the person who prevents a fire instead of just showing up to put it out. Sure, it's not as exciting as launching a brand new product, but it's the work that actually keeps companies moving. So what can you do? First, stop treating maintenance like failure. If you're maintaining code, it means someone is using it. It means it matters. That's a win. Second, leave the code better than you found it. Refactor when it makes sense. Add comments. Write tests. Reduce complexity. Future, you will thank you. So will the next developer. Third, treat maintenance like a skill. Because it is. It teaches you to be thoughtful, to plan, to avoid creating the kind of code you're currently cleaning up. And finally, don't lose your creativity. Just because you're maintaining doesn't mean you're stuck. You can still optimize, simplify, and improve things. You can still build, just in smaller, smarter ways. Because whether you're writing greenfield code or fixing that same bug for the 3rd sprint in a row, one thing's still true. You're solving problems. That's what developers do. So don't roll your eyes at the next legacy ticket. Fix it, improve it, document it, own it. Because the next dev maintaining your code, that might be you 6 months from now. When I first got into web development, everyone said the same thing. Learn React. It was the golden child, the industry standard, the ticket to a 6-figure job. So that's what I did. I opened up YouTube, cloned a few GitHub repos, and told myself I was building real projects. Fast forward 6 months, and I was knee-deep in props, hooks, custom hooks, use effect chaos, and libraries stacked on libraries just to render a button. Here's the thing. I don't regret learning React. I regret learning it first. React is not a beginner-friendly framework. Actually, let me rephrase that. React used to be approachable, but modern React, with everything from JSX syntax quirks to complex state management and dependency hell, it's like trying to learn how to drive by starting with a Formula One car. When you're new to coding, the most important skill you need to build isn't using the latest framework. It's understanding the fundamentals. How does a web page render? What is the DOM? How does CSS cascade? React skips past all of that and drops you into an abstraction rabbit hole. I remember writing code in React where I didn't actually know what was happening, just that it worked. That's a dangerous place to be. Because the moment something breaks, and trust me, it will break, you're stuck debugging magic you don't understand. React makes you feel productive fast. You get components on a screen, import a few libraries, and suddenly you feel like a real developer. But it's shallow. Without a core understanding of the browser, of plain JavaScript, of how data flows, you're just a copy-paste machine. And the worst part? You think you're learning, but you're just learning React, not programming. It wasn't until I circled back to Vanilla.js, played around with basic web APIs, and actually built things from scratch, no libraries, that I started to feel like I had any control. I realized something simple but powerful. Frameworks are shortcuts, and you can't take a shortcut if you don't know what road you're even on. React is great once you have a map. If you don't, it's just a confusing jungle. Another thing people don't talk about is how React teaches bad habits. Since so much is abstracted, you don't learn why certain things matter, like accessibility, performance, or clean separation of logic and UI. Everything ends up in a hook or a 300-line component. You call it dry, but it's just messy. There's also the mental strain. The React ecosystem moves fast. You'll spend half your time Googling new best practices, trying to understand what changed in the latest version, or dealing with context weirdness because some package wasn't updated. That's not learning, that's firefighting. React's popularity also creates this weird illusion that it's the only valid way to build things. But there's a whole world of front-end development out there. Frameworks like Vue and Svelte that are arguably more intuitive for beginners. Or even just sticking with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript until you're solid. You don't need to join the hype train immediately. I know the pressure. Job listings ask for React. Boot camps teach React. But the truth is, if you build a portfolio of projects, even in plain JavaScript, and can explain your code with clarity, you will get noticed. The demand is for developers who understand problems and solve them. Not just React jockeys who can throw together a CRUD app. So here's what I'd do if I could start over. I'd spend 3 months mastering vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'd build a blog, a portfolio, a form with validation. I'd deploy something, learn how to host, set up a basic backend. Then, and only then, I'd reach for a framework like React. Not because I need it, but because I finally understand what problems it's solving. React is a tool, but if it's the first thing you touch, you won't know what it's fixing or what it's breaking. Subscribe to Shade of Code, because I believe in you.